Hi, this is Hans from Request for Music, and this is a new video about ELEKTRAX, my drum module. It appeared that my voice wasn't too clear on the earlier recording, so just to be safe, this is a new recording. On the screen you see my ELEKTRAX module and a couple of other modules that I will also include in this tutorial/demo. ELEKTRAX itself is a drum module, and the drum module has 4 sequencer tracks to work with, and you see, on top you see the speed dial with the counter that shows the actual chosen speed at the moment, and you see a reset button and a start-stop button. And obviously the start-stop button starts the sequence, and the resets button resets the steps to the first step of the sequence. Underneath you see sort of a track selector, so you see number 1, 2, 3 and 4. Let's zoom in. Number 1, 2, 3 and 4, and you see mute buttons in front of that. And the tracks themselves, if you choose them, they get different colors depending on the track that you choose. And the track colors will also show up in the color surrounding all of the dials that you can use for the settings of the track. For the rest, you see 16 steps for each of those tracks, and those steps will get colors as soon as you click them, and that will then drive the track's instrument. Each instrument has a pitch that you can set, and those settings are different per track. So you see in this wood panel that I use and that I will also bring online in the store for free afterwards. So you can type a header somewhere and some normal text as on a wood panel, so that that's not too far off from your normal VM background then. It shows the actual settings or the pitches that are available for each of those tracks. So the first track I actually intended for the use of, for instance, a kick drum, and you can actually see the name of the track underneath, and when you double click that track name you can set and give it your own name, which is obviously retained afterwards or in a preset anyway. So if I click this and then I get any pitch, and without changing anything of it, and I'll start off by connecting this. I'll connect it to a delay of mine, which is also not in the store yet. I'll connect it up to these, and I'll connect these into the inputs of the main outs. So we have something to work with. I'll bypass that first for both of the delays, because actually this is a dual delay. It has 2 delays that you can set separately. So if I set the sound now, hopefully it's not too loud, but just click it on. So now you hear the pitch for the first kick drum, so to speak. So let's just repeat it a couple of times. You hear it on every quarter. Speed is 60 beats per minute, and this speed is actually separate from the DAW speed. To get synced speed, you can actually press Shift on the speed dial. So if I do that, press Shift left click, you see you get no durations that you can set by turning the dial. So that's the other way of working with this. So let's set it at 1/4. The system itself is at 120 beats, so that means that we're twice normal speed for those. So let's click these off. Then we would have a step of 1 second for each. Okay, so looking at these, we've got a pitch setting, we have a wave dial, we have decay, we have bend, B time, which stands for bend time, noise, level, and pan that you can set for all of these tracks. So obviously if I turn the pitch up, it will change the pitch for that specific note. If I was to change the wave, it's going to change between a sine wave to the full left and a saw wave to the full right. So you get sort of synthesizer sounds as well, if you wanted to. Let's keep it at a sine wave for now. And the decay is the next one, and the decay obviously shortens or lengthens the tone. When it encounters a new gate, so to speak, or a new step, it will break off that decay and start a new gate. So you get something like that. The next one is the bend, because sometimes you want notes to bend on or at the moment when they're struck. So if I put the bend up, and the bend goes from 0 to plus 100%, so if I turn the bend up to something like 20% or 30%, what am I at? I can actually change the bend time afterwards, because at the beginning it doesn't do anything unless you turn up the bend time as well. And then you can get sort of this Simmonsy like electric kick drum. Obviously there should also be an option to turn noise up for that specific track as well, because snare drums and stuff like that use noise to get that. So I can just turn the noise up from 0, where you have full normal tone of the oscillator and no noise, and if I do it to complete 100%, I don't get any oscillator anymore, but just noise. So you can dial between those and start a mix for yourself. Obviously there's a level available for that specific track and a pan, so you can change where in the stereo field the sound will be. So if I have something like this, and let's start creating some drum pattern, I'll dial it down just a bit so it's not too loud. I'll click on channel or track number 2, and I'll start putting in the upbeats for the snare. You see that there's lighter gray areas which sort of depict the step within the 16 steps. So you see that I got the 1, the 5, the 9, and the 13th, which are lighter, so it's easier to work in steps of 4. So now I've got this snare. I might want to change the decay a bit longer, and maybe the wave a bit back, and maybe I want to play with the pitch to get a more tight kind of snare drum like that. Maybe the level a bit back and set the pan a bit to the left, because that's normally where they are, just a bit to the left when you're playing live on a drum, and the kick drum is really in the middle. Let's take the next track and put something like a hi-hat or something, whatever, in there, and just put those on all of those 4 steps of the 4 quarters, and change the pitch maybe, change the wave maybe, and put some noise or some less noise or more noise, whatever you want, and the decay of course of that. So let's put it a bit shorter like this, and change the rhythm a bit. Something like that, and I'll put that indeed more to the left, and let's put some bell at the end, so something again, or oops, that's already has some bend in there, so let's reset some of that stuff, because oops, that was not what I intended. So let's put that up the make it shorter, make it higher. Something like that. So you hear it's pretty easy to create some kind of drum tracks, and actually in the module preset I will have a couple of files available. You'll probably have to download those first from my website and then put them into your module preset folder, so ELEKTRAX will be able to get to those. underneath this track selector where you have this name of the sound available, there's start, stop, and reset option that you can use to obviously start, stop, or reset this module. And underneath there's a couple of output tracks. There's 4 control voltage outputs, the left ones, which actually output the pitch, including the bend range of, or the bend of that specific track. So you can use that to, for instance, drive a new oscillator or something like that, or maybe drive whatever else you want. The pitch themselves are staying on for that track as long as you need. So you need something like an envelope, which is also output here to drive filters or stuff like that, or amplifiers to be able to then cut that sound off, or at least make it silent or something like that. And the envelope really outputs the chosen decay of that track. And you can actually also use that to start or stop a new module. So that would mean that if I would, for instance, duplicate this ELEKTRAX module, I could actually use maybe one of those tracks to drive something else, because envelope 4, for instance, would output these the steps for these. So then the decay or the envelope is started at number 3, step number 3, and again at step number 11 in this case. But let's say that I would want step 9 to be able to drive the next ELEKTRAX. So let's first of all reset these by double-clicking the tracks, which will empty that all those steps. Settings will remain the same, but at least the steps are gone, so you have something new to work with. So let's just take the output of this and put that into the start module of this, and say that, for instance, I would have this same 4th track and use that same 9th one to for instance, start the other one or reset the other one. I could actually take the envelope of this out and put that into this. Yeah, so in that case, I would, for instance, reset this first. So first of all, let's reset both of them. And there are easier ways to do that if I wanted to. There's a module here on the left, which is a free module by P Moon, which has a couple of buttons with control voltages out. So it would be very easy to just take this first one and put that into the start-stop buttons of both of the ELEKTRAXes, and use the control voltage out to stop both of them, and probably also reset both of them, because that would be the most handy trick to do. Because when they're run, say I have run this and I'm running that, it needs to have an output, by the way. If there's no output connected, it won't run, because then it also takes less processor CPU power, so to speak. So any case, if I now click on this button from this starts off on this free module, it will reset both of them, and so it's and then I could stop both of them. And you now see that the first one is actually stopping the other. So let's do it a bit different now. Let's I've reset both of them, and let's just click this one on, so it's not going to start both of them. Click this one on, now the other one will go on. And I could actually have taken the first step from this, for instance, or maybe the step from this again to stop it. Because if I now stop this and look at this, this is now using the envelope to start the second ELEKTRAX, but I could also have used this same step to stop this itself. So in that case, if I reset both of them and start this, now the next one should start the other one, for instance, instead of resetting, which I did earlier, I guess. it should now, instead of resetting, let's just take this out, it should start the other one again. So let's put both of them back and start this one. That will stop, that will run, then that one will run, and this one should actually stop itself at that point as well. So take this and also put it into its own stop, and then we've got sort of a self-running system. So let's stop both of them, reset both of them, start one, it's going to start the other, it's going to stop itself, start the other, and so on, and it's going to drive all the way that way. Both of them are at quarter-inch speeds now, and let's first of all stop both of them, reset, and create the same sort of settings, but maybe this is a slightly more elaborate kind of rhythm. So put this is just a snare there, and put that there, and maybe do something like this here for the next one. So reset, start this one. And you hear now that obviously I didn't put anything in the second half of this second ELEKTRAX. So that means that since there's no information, it will just be quiet for those 8 steps. And maybe I should have put some in there as well. So maybe do something like this here, and again, and fill the open spots with snares. So that's one here, and let's look back. So take this, reset both of them, start the first one. It's giving some noise. I'm not quite sure why it does. Probably just because of the start-stop thing. It's getting a bit too much information at this point. But in any case, you hear that it can create quite elaborate rhythms that way, especially when I would use one at a lower speed than the other, because then it's going to do real weird stuff. And I could actually use any of these to, for instance, reset this without resetting itself. So let's take some of these cables out and just do some stupid stuff with it. This one's at 1/4. Let's put this one at 1/8. I'll reset both of them, so they run at the same time. And now I use the track number 2 output to reset the first. So it's going to reset at every step. So it's going to be to keep running at a specific point. But anyway, we'll just see what happens. So take this one out, reset that one, and yeah, let's just see what happens. Oh, I've been stopping this by itself, so I should take that out, obviously. Reset both of them, start this one. The noise that you're hearing is actually just the output of both of the tracks that are going to be messing stuff up a bit. Anyway, you see that you can do very strange stuff by having one driving the other, so to speak. So let's take this up to 1/1, for instance, which is very slow, of course, and this back to 1/4, just to see what happens. And let's just start both of them. And this obviously is a lot slower now. You could actually even create something like one sort of a driver for multiple of those ELEKTRAXes, because if I would use the start or stop button from one to stop a next ELEKTRAX and start another one again and so on, you could really have very complex ways of working with that. But let's just go back to one singular, because that can be interesting enough in itself. Let's go back to 1/4, and what did we have? Something like this. Put the level a bit down. Okay, so this is going through my delay, and the delay has been bypassed at the moment. And just to show you a bit about this delay, the delay can actually, it obviously has a delay time and a mix setting and a feedback and a cross setting. And actually, and what that does, by the way, the cross setting is sort of feeding the output of the first channel into the second channel and the other way around. So that means that your delay can be different than you would normally expect. And actually, you see modulation inputs for all of those. So that means that I could actually drive those modulations with one of the envelopes outputs, for instance, of this. So if I would use the decay of the kick, so let's take that longer. I could take the envelope and, for instance, use the let's drive the mix and put some feedback in there, and by something like this. And actually, the my delay has a low switch in this case on, which means that it sets a setting of 150 milliseconds. Let's stop this for once. It has a mid setting where the setting goes from 100 up to 1500 milliseconds, and a high setting which goes from 1000 up to 5000. So that means that if I would go to the low section, which goes really low, up to 0 actually, I could actually change it to some sort of a flanging effect, for instance, especially when I modulate this. So if I take this sound, and let's forget about the mix first, let's just start this, and put the mix up, feedback up. I only have it at one channel set at the moment. I could obviously cross it over to the second channel a bit if I wanted to. It does it just a bit, and but take it out and let's modulate this, because that's what this last module was for, which is an LFO, which I'm building in a moment, which will also, just as delay, will hopefully be available within a couple of weeks. The LFO, I've created that to the image of an LFO module that I had in a modular synth that I built back in the 80s, or in the 70s, actually 77. I started building that, and it had a module that had 3 LFOs in it, and I wanted to have the same kind of module with MVMs, so that's why this is here. It has also the same kind of LFO, or the speed setting as you've just seen in the delay. So it has a low or a mid or a high setting, and actually the settings can change from 0 up to 1 hertz. And if I go into the mid section, it will go from 1 hertz up to 5 hertz, and in the high setting it will go from 5 hertz up to 15 hertz. And if I switch back, you see that a light will show as a sort of an overflow, because the knob is actually still at the setting that it had in the high setting. So as soon as I get within the normal range of this speed dial, you won't see those lights set up. Anyway, it has, for every LFO in there, it has that speed setting, of course. It has an FM and a level/AM dial. It has a reset input to make sure that the start point of the LFO, of the oscillator, can be reset at a specific point. So apart from that, it has modulation inputs for this FM and level AM, and the last ones are the 4 bars that have, or in the orange bars, are the 4 outputs: the sine output, triangle, a saw or ramp that you can choose with this switch in the middle, and a square tooth. So let's just take the triangle out and drive this with it. I'll be going into low speeds, so I'll set this to low, and I'll set the level, which is actually also the output of this. I'll set that to a low value as well, which is going to drive this. So that means that if I have this on, you'll hear that I now get sort of a flangy kind of speed or effect, and obviously this will change the depth for that. So let's dial the mix a bit back. Well, and actually I can also drive these kind of things from the ELEKTRAX, because the envelope can drive this. So if I have the feedback on, I'll dial back the mix. I can instead change that mix from this. So now it will get that chorus effect only when the decay runs. So if I take this shorter, it will also drive this less. Yeah. So that way you can really get weird effects. Let's say that I'll do kind of the same thing on the other side for this. So also a low value there, and let's use the same speed for my setting of the depth of this, and let's take the snare settings, which is on the track 2, and drive the mix from there. So let's see. Seem to be not to be having too much of that channel at the moment. I'm not quite sure why. Oh, sure. Bypassing, switching that off will help. And let's change the decay for this. And obviously there's a level on each of those tracks, so it would mean that I could even say that, for instance, if I don't drive it with this snare output, but I would drive the mix with the last output, which is this, and I'll take the level off, it is still going to output an envelope for this. So actually then I could put more and maybe some weird ones in there and drive the mix from there and use a shorter decay, and just let's see what happens. And in this case I'm using a sine wave or a triangle wave. I could also have used this as a sawtooth and maybe get more depth to change the speed of the chorus a bit more intense, and maybe and then I could actually use, for instance, this first one to make sure that the LFO is reset. So then just take an X cable into the reset, so each time this is handled, this one will reset, so the saw will start at its normal starting point again. So let's reset that. And obviously I need to keep track of what I'm driving and how. The decay setting was used for this mix at this point. But I hope that at least gives you an impression of what you can do with ELEKTRAX as a starter, and especially when you're going to combine it with multiple ELEKTRAXes, or when you start working with the couple of the modules that I'm going to be putting in the store within a couple of weeks, hopefully. So I hope that gives an impression, and I hope that the sound is better, and if not, please let me know, and I'll try to improve it afterwards again. Cheers, bye bye.